The baby's cry cut through the blizzard like a knife through flesh. Samuel Thornton had survived Gettysburg, had watched men die in his arms, had walked through hell and kept walking. But nothing in 36 years of hard living had ever stopped his heart like that sound. A baby, crying in a Montana blizzard, where no baby should exist. He turned his horse toward the wail, and the snow swallowed him whole. What he found in that frozen darkness would change everything he believed about himself. Before we continue, if you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. And if you believe in second chances, hit that subscribe button and follow along to the very end. Now, let's ride. The Montana Territory didn't forgive mistakes. Samuel Thornton had learned that truth the hard way through 12 years of drifting, carrying ghosts in his saddlebags, and asking nothing from anyone, because asking meant owing, and owing meant staying, and staying meant roots he didn't deserve to grow. At 36, his face told his story better than words ever could. Lines carved deep around gray-blue eyes that had seen too much at Antietam, at Fredericksburg, at a dozen nameless fields where boys became corpses and corpses became memories he couldn't outrun. The scar from his left eye to his cheekbone had faded to silver, but it still pulled when he frowned, which was often. He'd been riding toward Pine Ridge for 2 days, chasing work at a cattle ranch that supposedly needed hands for the winter. The job paid $40 a month plus board, enough to survive until spring, enough to move on when the snow melted. That was the pattern, always moving, never staying long enough for anyone to expect anything from him. The blizzard had come fast, the way Montana storms did, turning a gray afternoon into a white nightmare within an hour. Sam had pushed through worse. Scout, his bay gelding of 8 years, knew how to find shelter, how to keep moving when every instinct said stop. Then he heard it. The cry was thin, desperate, fighting against wind that wanted to swallow every sound. Sam pulled Scout to a halt, his breath freezing in his beard. He listened. The wind howled, snow drove sideways into his face. Nothing. He'd imagined it, had to have imagined it. No baby could be out here, miles from anywhere, in weather that killed grown men in hours. The cry came again, weaker, breaking into a wet cough that sounded like drowning. Sam touched his heels to Scout's flanks. The horse didn't want to move, every instinct telling him to find shelter. But Sam urged him forward, following that sound through the white wall of snow. He almost missed her. She was just a dark shape in a drift, nearly buried, curled around something she was protecting with her body. Her dress, once blue, was soaked through and freezing stiff. Her hair had come loose from its pins, dark strands plastered to a face so pale it looked like porcelain about to shatter. And in her arms, wrapped in what might have been a christening gown weeks ago, a baby screamed with the fury of the starving. Sam dismounted, his boots sinking knee-deep into the snow. He approached slowly, the way he'd approach a wounded animal. Careful. Watching. "Ma'am?" His voice came out rough, unused. He'd spoken to Scout more than people in the past week. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered, brown, deep brown, filled with fear and fever and something that looked like surrender. She tried to speak, but only a whisper came out. "Take her." The words barely made it past her cracked lips. "Take my baby, please. Don't let him find her." Sam knelt beside her, snow soaking through his pants. Up close, he could see what the storm had hidden. Bruises, yellow and green ones fading on her jaw, fresh purple ones circling her throat like fingerprints. A cut on her forehead, crusted with frozen blood. Someone had done this to her. Someone had hurt her, and she'd run into a blizzard rather than stay. "Who did this to you?" Sam asked, though he already knew the answer. Same answer it always was. A husband, a father, a man who thought owning a marriage certificate meant owning a person. She didn't answer. Her eyes were closing, her grip on the baby loosening. "Hey." Sam touched her face, shocked by the heat radiating from her skin despite the cold. "Stay with me. You hear me? Stay with me." The baby's cries intensified, purple-faced and furious. Sam looked at the infant, at the tiny fists clenched against the cold, at the mouth open in a square of pure outrage, and felt something crack open in his chest. He'd spent 12 years avoiding this, avoiding connections, responsibilities, anything that might make him stay. But this baby, this woman, they were dying right in front of him, and he couldn't ride past, couldn't pretend he hadn't heard. All right, Sam made his decision the way he'd made every decision since the war. Fast. Final. No looking back. "All right, I've got you. Both of you." He pulled off his coat first, wrapping it around the woman's shoulders. Then his shirt, bundling the baby against his bare chest where his body heat could keep her alive. The cold bit into his skin like teeth, but he'd survived worse. Had to believe he'd survive this. The woman weighed almost nothing when he lifted her, all bone and dehydration, her body burning with fever while her skin froze. He managed to get her onto Scout, then mounted behind her, holding her upright against his chest with the baby secured between them. Southeast. He remembered the direction from his map. Pine Ridge was maybe 5 miles southeast. In good weather, an easy ride. In this blizzard, with a dying woman and a starving infant, it might as well be 100. "Come on, Scout," Sam urged the horse forward. "Fast as you can without killing us all." The gelding's ears flicked back, then forward. 8 years they'd been together. 8 years of trusting each other through floods and droughts, and one memorable night when they'd outrun a wildfire. If any horse could make this ride, Scout could. They pushed through the storm. The woman drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes murmuring words Sam couldn't understand, sometimes going so still he had to check for breath. The baby quieted after the first mile, which scared him more than the crying had. He kept his hand pressed against her tiny back, feeling for movement, for life. Still there, still fighting. "You hear me?" Sam spoke into the wind, not knowing if the woman could hear him. "Your baby needs you. Whatever you're running from, whoever did this to you, she needs you to fight. Don't you dare give up." Her head lolled against his shoulder, but her heart kept beating, fast and thready, counting down to something he refused to let happen. The snow began to thin. Sam could see shapes emerging from the white. Buildings, a church steeple, smoke rising from chimneys like prayers. Pine Ridge. He rode down the main street at a gallop that sent people scattering. A woman screamed. A man shouted. Dogs barked. Sam didn't care about any of it. "Doctor!" His voice cracked across the frozen air. "I need a doctor!" A man stepped out of the general store, his face hard with suspicion beneath a fur hat. "What's going on here?" "Found them in the blizzard. Woman's dying. Baby's starving. Where's your doctor?" The man's expression shifted, suspicion giving way to something else. Curiosity, maybe. Or judgment. "Doc Carver's place. End of the street. White house with a green door." "But mister, who are these people? We don't know them." "Does it matter?" Sam didn't wait for an answer. He pushed Scout into a final sprint. The White House appeared through the thinning snow, its green door like a promise. Sam dismounted before Scout fully stopped, nearly falling, his legs numb from cold and the awkward ride. He carried the woman up the porch steps and pounded on the door. It opened to reveal a man in his late 50s, silver-haired, with the calm eyes of someone who'd seen death too many times to panic at the sight of it. He took one look at the bundle in Sam's arms and stepped aside. "Bring her in, quickly." The house was warm, blessedly warm, smelling of wood smoke and carbolic and dried herbs. Sam laid the woman on a narrow bed in what looked like an examination room. "The baby," the doctor said, already checking the woman's pulse. "Is she injured?" "I don't think so." Sam unwrapped the infant from his shirt, his movements awkward. "Just hungry, cold. I don't know how long they were out there." The doctor took the baby, his weathered hands surprisingly gentle. He examined her quickly, efficiently. "She's dehydrated, but she's fighting. That's good." He raised his voice. "Martha, I need you!" A woman appeared in the doorway, middle-aged, with flour on her apron and steel in her spine. She took in the scene without flinching. "Lord have mercy! What happened?" "Found them in the blizzard." Sam was starting to shake now, the adrenaline draining away. Maybe 5 miles out. She was collapsed in the snow. The baby was crying. Martha crossed to take the infant, cradling her with practiced ease. "She needs goat's milk, warmed. I'll get the eyedropper." The doctor was already working on the woman, cutting away her frozen dress with careful scissors. When the fabric fell away, Sam saw more of what he'd suspected. Bruises everywhere. Ribs, back, shoulders. A pattern of violence that told its own story. Someone did this. The doctor's voice was flat. His hands kept moving, professional, detached, but his jaw was tight. "Yes." "Recently?" "Some of it. The bruises on her throat are fresh. Maybe 2, 3 days old." The doctor nodded once, then looked at Sam. "You should sit down before you fall down. You're hypothermic and probably in shock. When did you last eat?" Sam tried to remember. Yesterday? The day before? Time had gotten strange in the storm. "That's what I thought." Dr. Carver pointed to a chair. "Sit. Martha will bring you something. You're no good to anyone if you collapse." Sam wanted to argue, but his body made the decision for him. His knees buckled, and he sank into the chair, shaking hard enough to rattle his teeth. Martha returned with the baby, who was making weak sucking sounds around an eyedropper. "She's taking the milk, slowly, but she's taking it." She looked at Sam with something that might have been respect. "You saved their lives, mister, whoever you are." Sam watched the woman on the bed, her face still deathly pale, but her breathing easier now that she was warm. Her fever, I saw bruises on her throat. Fingerprints. Dr. Carver's expression darkened. I saw them too. Strangulation marks. Someone tried to choke her. He paused. Someone who wore a ring on his left hand. The imprint is still visible. A husband, then? Sam said what they were all thinking. Most likely. The doctor covered her with blankets, preserving what dignity he could. "She's severely dehydrated. The fever's dangerous, probably infection from the wounds. But if we can get fluids into her, keep the fever down, she has a chance. She's young, strong. She made it this far." "And the baby?" Martha smiled, though her eyes were wet. "This little one's a fighter. Look at her. She'll be fine when she gets some food in her belly and some warmth in her bones." Sam looked at the infant, at those dark blue eyes that had opened now, watching the world with what seemed like ancient wisdom. Her tiny hand found Martha's finger and gripped it with surprising strength. Something shifted in Sam's chest, something he'd spent 12 years trying to keep locked away. "Do we know their names?" Martha asked. No, Sam realized he hadn't even asked. Just found them. No papers, no belongings. Just her and the baby and the clothes on their backs. "Well," Martha shifted the baby to her shoulder, patting her back gently. "Until we know different, I suppose we'll call her Grace, because that's what she is. Grace in the middle of a storm." Dr. Carver nodded slowly. "And the mother?" "Hope," Martha said, "because that's what she needs right now. More than medicine, more than warmth. She needs to know there's something worth waking up for." Sam looked at them both, these strangers who'd opened their door without question, who'd taken in a frozen woman and her starving child without asking for anything in return. It wasn't what he'd expected from a frontier town, wasn't what he'd learned to expect from people at all. The woman on the bed stirred. Her eyelids fluttered, brown eyes struggling to focus. When they found Sam, something flickered there. Not recognition. Assessment. The calculation of whether he was threat or salvation. "You're safe." Sam said it before he thought, the words coming from somewhere deep. "You're in Pine Ridge. This is Dr. Carver. You've been very sick, but you're safe now." Her lips moved. The sound that came out was barely a whisper, rough with disuse and fever. "My baby." "She's fine." Martha moved into view immediately, showing her the infant. "Fed and warm and sleeping now. See, she's fine." The woman's eyes filled with tears. She reached out with a trembling hand, touching the baby's head with infinite gentleness. The relief on her face was so profound it hurt to witness. "Thank you." The words cracked and broke. "Thank you." "Can you tell us your name?" Dr. Carver asked gently. The woman's gaze shifted, moving from the doctor to Martha to Sam. Something shuddered in her expression, a wall going up. "Clara," she said finally. "Clara Mitchell. And my daughter is Lily." "Clara," Dr. Carver nodded. "I need to ask you some questions, and I need honest answers. Can you do that?" A pause, then, barely perceptible, a nod. "How did you end up in that blizzard? Were you traveling? Did your wagon break down?" "I was walking." "Walking? In this weather? From where?" Clara's eyes went distant. When she spoke again, her voice was flat, empty, the voice of someone describing a nightmare from which they'd finally woken. "From hell. I was walking from hell. And I didn't think I'd make it out alive." The room fell silent except for the crackle of the fire and the baby's soft breathing. Sam watched Clara's face, saw the truth written in every bruise, every flinch, every careful word she chose. She was running from something, someone, and whatever she'd left behind was worse than dying in a blizzard. "Well," Dr. Carver's voice was carefully neutral, professionally kind. "You made it. You're going to keep making it, because we're going to help you get strong again." Clara's eyes found Sam's again. "Why?" The question was sharp, suspicious. "Why would you help me? You don't know me. Don't know what I've done. What I've—" "Don't have to know." Sam surprised himself by answering. "Out here, you help people who need helping. That's all there is to it." "And if someone comes looking for me?" The question hung in the air like gun smoke. Sam felt something harden in his chest, a decision forming before he'd even realized he was making it. "Then they'll have to go through me first." Clara stared at him for a long moment, those brown eyes searching his face for the lie, the ulterior motive, the betrayal she'd clearly learned to expect. Whatever she found there must have satisfied something, because her rigid shoulders eased, just slightly. "My husband." The word came out like poison. "His name is Edmund Whitmore. If he comes here, you have to promise me something." "What?" "Don't let him take Lily." Clara's voice cracked but held. "No matter what he says, no matter what papers he has, no matter how reasonable he seems, don't let him take my daughter. He'll kill her. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but he will kill her, because she's proof that I defied him." Sam looked at the baby sleeping peacefully in Martha's arms, at her tiny fists curled against her chest, at the fragile flutter of her pulse in her throat. Then he looked at Clara, battered and broken but still fighting, still protecting her child, even when she couldn't protect herself. Something clicked into place inside him, something that had been broken since the war. "I promise," he said, and meant it more than he'd meant anything in 12 years. "He won't touch her." Clara's eyes filled with tears again, but this time, mixed with the fear, there was something else. Hope. "You don't even know me," she whispered. "Why would you make a promise like that?" Sam didn't have a good answer. Didn't have any answer that made sense when said aloud. He just knew that he'd heard this baby crying in a blizzard, had felt her tiny hand grip his thumb like he was worth holding on to, and something had changed. Something he couldn't unchange. "Because somebody should," he said finally. "Because you deserve better than what you've had. And because that little girl deserves a chance to grow up without fear." Dr. Carver and Martha exchanged a glance. Something passed between them, an understanding that needed no words. "You should rest," the doctor said to Clara. "Your body's been through hell. Sleep now. We'll watch over you and the baby. Nothing's going to happen tonight." Clara's eyes were already closing, exhaustion and fever pulling her under. But her hand found Sam's, gripping with surprising strength. "Thank you," she breathed. "Thank you for stopping." Then she was asleep, her grip loosening but not letting go. Sam sat there through the long hours of the night, watching Clara and Lily sleep, listening to the wind howl outside, and wondering what he'd just committed himself to. He'd spent 12 years running from responsibility, from connection, from anything that might make him stay. Now he'd made a promise to a woman he didn't know, about a baby that wasn't his, against a man he'd never met. It was the most foolish thing he'd ever done. And somehow, for the first time in 12 years, it felt right. Outside, the blizzard raged on. But inside the White House with the green door, 3 lives had just begun to change. Clara's fever broke sometime before dawn. Sam knew because her grip on his hand loosened. Her breathing shifted from shallow and rapid to deep and steady, and the furrow between her brows finally smoothed. He'd been watching her face for hours, memorizing the map of bruises, the cut on her forehead, the way she flinched even in sleep when the wind rattled the windows. Dr. Carver appeared in the doorway, a cup of coffee in each hand. "You've been awake all night." "Couldn't sleep." The doctor handed him a cup and pulled up a chair. "The fever's broken. She'll live. They both will, thanks to you." Sam took a sip of the coffee, letting the heat burn down his throat. "I just brought them in. You did the rest." "I've been doctoring in this territory for 23 years, Mr. Thornton. I know the difference between a man who stumbles onto trouble and a man who rides into it on purpose. You could have passed by. Most would have." Sam didn't answer. He didn't know how to explain that passing by had never been an option. That the moment he'd heard Lily crying, something had shifted in him that couldn't shift back. "She's going to have questions when she wakes," Dr. Carver continued, "about where she is, who we are, what happens next. And someone is going to come looking for her. A woman doesn't end up half dead in a blizzard with those kinds of injuries unless someone put her there." "I know." "Do you?" The doctor's eyes were sharp, despite his gentle tone. "Because protecting her means more than one night's vigil. It means putting yourself between her and whatever she's running from. It means trouble, Mr. Thornton. The kind that follows a man." Sam looked at Clara's sleeping face, at the fingerprint bruises on her throat, at the way her hands still curled protectively toward where Lily slept in a makeshift cradle Martha had fashioned from a dresser drawer. "I've had trouble before," he said. "Never scared me off yet." The doctor nodded slowly, something like respect flickering in his expression. "Then you should know that Pine Ridge is a small town. Word travels fast. By noon, everyone will know a stranger rode in with a beaten woman and a baby. Some will want to help. Others will ask questions you might not want to answer. Let them ask. And if her husband shows up with legal papers? A marriage certificate gives a man rights in this territory, Mr. Thornton. Rights the law is bound to enforce, whether we agree with them or not." Sam's jaw tightened. "Then we'll find a way around the law." Before the doctor could respond, Clara stirred. Her eyes opened slowly, confusion giving way to recognition, then fear, then cautious relief as she remembered where she was. "Easy." Sam's voice came out softer than he intended. "You're still in Dr. Carver's house. You're safe." Clara pushed herself up on trembling arms, her eyes immediately finding the drawer where Lily slept. "The baby?" "She's fine. Fed her twice in the night. Martha's got her way with babies." Clara's shoulders sagged with relief. She looked at Sam, really looked at him, taking in his rumpled clothes, the dark circles under his eyes, the coffee cup in his hand. "You stayed all night." "Said I would." "I thought I dreamed that." She touched her throat, wincing at the bruises. "I thought I dreamed all of it. The storm, the horse, someone carrying me." Her voice cracked. "I thought I was dying." "You almost did." Dr. Carver moved to check her pulse, her temperature. "But you didn't. You're stronger than you know, Mrs. Mitchell." Clara flinched at the name. "It's not Mitchell." "I lied. I'm sorry. I was scared. What's your real name?" She hesitated, glancing at Sam as if gauging whether she could trust him with the truth. "Whitmore. Clara Whitmore. My husband is Edmund Whitmore." The name meant nothing to Sam, but Dr. Carver's expression changed. His hands stilled on Clara's wrist. "Edmund Whitmore of Chicago? The businessman?" Clara nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "You've heard of him. His father was a judge. He has connections across 3 territories." Dr. Carver sat back, his face grave. "Mrs. Whitmore, if your husband is who you say he is, this situation is more complicated than I thought." "I know." Clara wiped at her tears with the back of her hand. "That's why I lied. That's why I ran so far. I thought if I could just get far enough, somewhere he'd never think to look, maybe we'd have a chance." "Tell us what happened," Sam said. "All of it. If we're going to help you, we need to know what we're dealing with." Clara was quiet for a long moment, her gaze distant. When she spoke, her voice was flat, detached, the voice of someone who'd learned to separate herself from her own story just to survive the telling. "I met Edmund 3 years ago in Boston. I was a seamstress, working in a dress shop. He came in to have suits altered. He was handsome, educated, charming. He quoted poetry and brought me flowers." She laughed bitterly. "I grew up in an orphanage, Mr. Thornton. No family, no money, no prospects. When a man like Edmund Whitmore paid attention to me, I thought God had finally answered my prayers." "What changed?" "Nothing changed. That's the thing. He was always who he was. I just couldn't see it until after we married. The charm was real, but it was a tool, a way to get what he wanted. And what he wanted was something he could own, control, shape into whatever he needed. The first time? 2 weeks after the wedding. I disagreed with him about something small. I don't even remember what. He hit me so hard I saw stars. Then he apologized, cried, swore it would never happen again." Clara's voice hardened. "It happened again. And again. Each time he'd apologize. Each time I'd forgive him because I didn't know what else to do. Where would I go? I had no family, no money of my own, and he was so careful. The bruises were always where my clothes would cover them. To everyone else, we were the perfect couple. And when Lily came, Clara's hand went to her heart, pressing there as if to hold something in. I thought maybe a baby would change things, make him softer. Instead, it got worse. He wanted a son. When the midwife told us it was a girl, he looked at Lily like she was a mistake. My mistake. Her voice broke. He started talking about sending her away, to a boarding school as soon as she was old enough. Said daughters were useless. Said I'd failed him. What made you run? Clara's whole body went rigid. 2 weeks ago, he came home drunk. Some business deal had failed. He blamed me, said I'd embarrassed him at a dinner party, made him look weak in front of his partners. He beat me worse than he ever had before. And when Lily started crying, she stopped, her breath coming fast and shallow. Take your time, Dr. Carver said gently. Clara shook her head, forcing herself to continue. He picked her up, my 4-month-old baby, and he threw her across the room, against the wall, like she was nothing, like she was garbage. Sam's hands clenched into fists. He could feel rage building in his chest, cold and hard, the same rage he'd felt during the war when he'd seen officers order atrocities and call them strategy. I thought she was dead. Clara was crying openly now, tears streaming down her face. But she cried, and I knew. I knew if I didn't get her away from him that night, he would kill her. Maybe not that night, but eventually. So I waited until he passed out, and I took what little money I'd hidden, and I ran. How did you end up in the blizzard? I made it to a town called Miller's Crossing, about 40 miles east. I was trying to buy a stagecoach ticket when someone recognized me. Edmund had put out notices, offering a reward for information. Clara's voice dropped to a whisper. He came with 3 of his men. They found me at the boarding house. I barely got out the back door. I ran into the wilderness because there was nowhere else to go. The storm hit, and I just kept walking. I thought I would die out there. I thought at least if I died, he couldn't take Lily back to that house. Sam stood abruptly, pacing to the window because he couldn't sit still with this much fury burning in his blood. He'd seen evil during the war, had watched men do terrible things in the name of duty or survival. But this was different. This was a man who hurt his own wife and child and called it discipline. He'll come here, Sam said. It wasn't a question. Yes. Clara's voice was resigned. He won't stop looking. It's not about love, Mr. Thornton. It's about pride, about ownership. I'm his property, and I ran away. He'll never forgive that humiliation. Then we won't let him take you. Clara stared at him. You don't understand. Edmund has money, lawyers, friends in the territorial government. A court order is just paper to him. He'll find a way around it, over it, through it, and anyone who stands in his way will be destroyed. Let him try. She shook her head, fresh tears spilling. Why? Why would you risk that? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. Sam turned from the window to face her. He didn't have words for what he was feeling. Didn't have an explanation that made sense. All he knew was that he'd heard Lily crying in a blizzard, had felt her tiny hand grip his thumb like he was worth holding on to, and he couldn't walk away now. Couldn't pretend this wasn't his fight. Because I heard your daughter crying, he said simply. Because I couldn't ride past. And because men like your husband are the reason I stopped believing in anything. Maybe it's time I started believing again. The door opened, and Martha entered with Lily, the baby making soft cooing sounds. Clara's face transformed when she saw her daughter, all the fear and pain giving way to pure, uncomplicated love. She reached out, and Martha placed Lily in her arms. "She's been asking for you," Martha said with a gentle smile. In her way. Clara pressed her lips to Lily's forehead, breathing her in. "My sweet girl, Mama's here. Mama's never leaving you again." Sam watched them, mother and daughter, and felt something shift in his chest. He'd spent 12 years convinced he didn't deserve this kind of connection, that the things he'd seen and done in the war had made him unfit for anything soft or good. But standing here now, watching Clara hold her baby with such fierce tenderness, he wondered if maybe he'd been wrong. Maybe the wanting was enough. Maybe the trying could make up for everything that came before. A knock at the front door shattered the moment. Martha's face went pale. Who would be calling at this hour? "Stay here," Sam said to Clara. "Don't open this door unless it's me or the doctor." He walked through the house with measured steps, his hand moving to the revolver at his hip. "Doctor!" Carver joined him in the hallway, his expression grave. "Could be anyone," the doctor said quietly. "A patient? A neighbor?" "Could be." Sam opened the door. A man stood on the porch, mid-40s, wearing a sheriff's star on his coat. His face was weathered but kind, his eyes sharp as they took in Sam's hand resting on his gun. "Morning. Name's Tom Brennan. I'm the law in Pine Ridge." He glanced past Sam into the house. "Heard there was some excitement last night. Stranger riding in with a woman and baby, half frozen. Figured I should come check on things." Sam's hand didn't move from his weapon. "That's right. Mind if I come in?" The sheriff's tone was casual, but his eyes missed nothing. "Pretty cold out here for a conversation." Sam hesitated, then stepped aside. The sheriff entered, stamping snow off his boots, his gaze moving around the room with professional interest. "Dr. Carver?" Brennan nodded at the doctor. "How are the patients?" "Recovering," the doctor said carefully. "The woman was near death when Mr. Thornton brought them in. Fever, exposure, dehydration. And the bruises I heard about? The ones that look like someone used her as a punching bag?" Sam's jaw tightened. "What exactly did you hear?" The sheriff turned to face him directly. "I heard a man in town, stranger, name of Whitmore, has been asking about a woman and baby who went missing from his household. Says his wife is mentally unstable. Says she ran away without her medicine, and he's worried sick about her and the child." "That's not what happened." "No, I don't reckon it is." Brennan's voice was dry. "I've been sheriff here for 15 years, Mr. Thornton. I've seen enough wife-beaters to know the signs. And I've seen enough rich men use the law as a weapon to know how this usually plays out." "So what are you going to do?" "That depends." The sheriff's eyes met Sam's. "On what you're planning to do." Before Sam could answer, Clara appeared in the doorway of the examination room, Lily in her arms. Her face was pale, her body trembling, but her voice was steady. "Sheriff Brennan, I'm Clara Whitmore. My husband is Edmund Whitmore. He beat me for 3 years. 2 weeks ago, he threw my daughter against a wall. I ran because he was going to kill us both. Everything he's told you is a lie." Brennan studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he turned to Sam. "You planning on protecting this woman, Mr. Thornton?" "Yes. Even if it means going against a man with money, lawyers, and connections in the territorial government?" "Even then." The sheriff nodded slowly. "All right, then." He looked at Clara. "Ma'am, I can't promise to keep you safe from the law if your husband shows up with legal papers. Marriage gives a man rights I'm bound to enforce, whether I agree with them or not." But I can promise to make sure everything's done proper. No kidnapping in the night. No vigilante justice. If Whitmore wants his wife back, he'll have to do it through my office, in daylight, with witnesses." "That's something," Clara whispered. "It's all I can offer." Brennan tipped his hat. "I'll be watching, Mrs. Whitmore. Anything happens, anything at all, you send word." After the sheriff left, the house felt smaller, quieter, the weight of what was coming pressing down on all of them. Dr. Carver excused himself to make rounds. Martha busied herself in the kitchen, and Sam found himself alone with Clara, who was staring at the door like she expected it to burst open any moment. "He's already here," she said. "Edmund. He's already in town." "I figured as much." "He'll come to this house, probably today." Clara's voice was hollow. "He'll be charming, reasonable. He'll tell everyone I'm sick, that I need help, that he just wants to take me home and get me treatment." "And what do you want?" Clara looked at him, really looked at him, her brown eyes filled with something he couldn't name. "I want to stop running. I want my daughter to grow up without fear. I want to wake up one morning and not wonder if today's the day he finally kills me." She swallowed hard. "I want a life, Mr. Thornton. A real life. Not survival. Not just making it through another day. A life." Sam crossed to her, close enough to see the faint tremor in her hands, the rapid pulse in her throat. He'd spent 12 years running from connection, from responsibility, from anything that might make him stay. Now, standing in front of this woman who'd walked through a blizzard to save her child, he realized maybe he hadn't been running from those things at all. Maybe he'd been running toward them, just taking the long way. "Then we'll build you one," he said. "A life. Whatever it takes." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "You barely know me. I know you walked 40 miles through a blizzard with a baby in your arms. I know you chose death over going back to a man who hurt you. I know you're the bravest damn woman I've ever met." Sam's voice roughened. That's enough to start with. Before Clara could respond, the front door opened, and a voice carried through the house. A voice smooth as honey and cold as ice. "Dr. Carver? I'm looking for my wife. I believe she may have found her way to your practice." Clara went white. Her whole body seized like she'd been struck, her arms tightening around Lily so hard the baby whimpered. "That's him," she whispered. "That's Edmund." Sam's hand found his gun. "Stay behind me." He walked toward the front of the house, toward the voice, toward the man who'd thrown a baby against a wall and called himself a husband. Edmund Whitmore stood in the entryway like he owned it, tall, handsome in a polished way, his dark hair slicked back, his suit tailored and expensive despite the frontier surroundings. Two men flanked him, both armed, both watching Sam with the flat eyes of hired muscle. "Good morning." Edmund's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I'm looking for a woman, my wife, Clara. She's been very ill, wandered off without her medicine. I'm terribly worried about her." Sam positioned himself between Edmund and the hallway to the examination room. "Haven't seen anyone like that." "Really?" Edmund's eyebrows rose. "Because I have witnesses who say a man matching your description rode into town last night with a woman and infant. Brought them to this very house. Lot of women in Montana. Lot of babies, too." Edmund's smile thinned. "I appreciate your discretion, mister. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name." "Thornton. Sam Thornton." "Mr. Thornton." Edmund took a step forward, and his men moved with him, a practiced formation. "I'm going to be very direct with you. My wife is not well. She suffers from episodes, delusions. She's made accusations against me before, wild stories that have no basis in reality. I only want to take her home, get her the help she needs." That's not what the bruises say. The words dropped like stones into still water. Edmund's face went very still. I beg your pardon? The bruises, Sam said. The ones on her throat, shaped like fingerprints. The ones on her ribs, shaped like a boot. The cut on her forehead. You put those there, Mr. Whitmore. You beat your wife and threw your baby against a wall. And now you're standing in this house pretending to be worried about her health. For a moment, the mask slipped. Sam saw what lived underneath. Cold fury, wounded pride, the calculation of a predator deciding whether to strike now or wait. Then the mask was back, smooth and reasonable. Whatever Clara has told you is a product of her illness. She imagines things, creates stories. It's very sad, really. I've consulted the best doctors in Chicago. The best doctors. Sam's voice was flat. That's convenient, Mr. Thornton. Edmund's tone hardened. I don't know what you think you're doing here, but I should warn you that interfering with a husband's legal rights to his family is a serious crime. I have lawyers. I have friends in the territorial government. I have a court order from a judge in Chicago granting me emergency custody of my wife and child. He pulled a folded paper from his coat and held it up. This gives me the legal right to reclaim what's mine. If you try to stop me, I'll have you arrested. Sam didn't flinch. You can try. The door behind him opened. Clara stepped out, Lily in her arms, her face pale but her chin high. Hello, Edmund. Edmund's expression transformed, concern flooding his features, the worried husband rushing to his wife's side. Clara, thank God. I've been so worried. When you disappeared, I thought... Clara held up her hand, stopping him in his tracks. Don't. Darling, you're not well. Let me help you. I said don't. Clara's voice shook, but it didn't break. Don't call me darling. Don't pretend you were worried. Don't act like you care about anything except getting us back so you can finish what you started. Clara, please. Edmund's voice dropped to something intimate, meant only for her. Whatever I've done, whatever mistakes I've made, we can work through them. Come home. Let me prove I can be better. Better? Clara laughed, and there was no humor in it. You threw our daughter against a wall, Edmund. You tried to strangle me. You beat me so badly I couldn't walk for 2 days. And you want to talk about being better? The mask cracked again, just for an instant, long enough for Sam to see the truth underneath. Edmund Whitmore wasn't worried about his wife. He was furious, humiliated. A man who'd never been told no, who'd never had his property refuse him, facing something he couldn't control. We're not doing this here. Edmund's voice went cold. In public, in front of strangers. Then leave. Clara's voice hardened to match his. Because I'm not going anywhere with you. Not today, not ever. That's not your choice to make. Yes, it is. For the first time in 3 years, Clara's voice rang with conviction. It's my choice, my life, my daughter, and I choose to stay here, away from you. Edmund's eyes flickered to Sam, assessing, calculating. You're making a mistake, Clara. This man can't protect you. He's nobody, a drifter. He can't give you what I can give you. What you gave me was bruises, Clara shot back. Broken bones, nightmares, fear. I'd rather have nothing with a stranger than everything with you. For a long moment, no one moved. The air crackled with tension, with the promise of violence waiting to erupt. Then Edmund smiled, and it was the coldest thing Sam had ever seen. Very well, if that's how you want to play this. He folded the court order and returned it to his pocket. I'll be at the hotel. My lawyers will be here by tomorrow. We'll settle this legally, since you insist on being difficult. He turned to leave, then paused at the door, looking back at Sam. Mr. Thornton, you should know that I don't forget insults, and I don't forgive them. Whatever happens to you from here, remember that you brought it on yourself. I'll take my chances." Edmund's smile widened. "I was hoping you'd say that." He left, his men following, the door closing behind them with a soft click that sounded somehow louder than a gunshot. Clara sagged against the doorframe, all the strength going out of her at once. Lily whimpered, sensing her mother's distress, and Clara pressed her lips to the baby's head, murmuring comfort she didn't feel. "He won't stop," she whispered. "He'll never stop." Sam moved to her side, not touching, just present. "Then we won't either. You don't know what he's capable of. The lawyers he'll bring, the lies he'll tell." "Doesn't matter." Clara looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. "Why are you doing this? Really, I need to understand." Sam was quiet for a moment, searching for words to explain something he barely understood himself. Finally he said, "Because I spent 12 years believing I wasn't worth anything. That the things I'd seen and done made me unfit for anything good." He met her eyes. "Then I heard your daughter crying in a blizzard, and she reached up and grabbed my thumb like I mattered. Like I was worth holding on to. Nobody's done that in a long time, Mrs. Whitmore." Clara stared at him, something shifting in her expression. Something like recognition, like understanding. "Clara," she said softly. "What?" "My name. It's Clara, not Mrs. Whitmore." She touched his arm, just briefly. "And you matter, Mr. Thornton. You matter more than you know." They stood there in the quiet house, two broken people finding something unexpected in each other. Not love, not yet, maybe not ever, but something worth fighting for. Outside, the winter wind howled against the windows, and somewhere in town, Edmund Whitmore was making plans. But inside, standing beside a woman who'd walked through hell and a baby who'd survived against all odds, Samuel Thornton made a decision. He was done running. Whatever came next, he'd face it standing still. The night after Edmund's visit, Sam didn't sleep. He sat in the chair by the window, watching the street, waiting for trouble that didn't come. Clara dozed fitfully in the examination room, Lily tucked against her chest, both of them finally warm and safe, but far from peaceful. Dr. Carver found him there at dawn, still watching, still waiting. "He didn't come back," Sam said without turning. "He won't. Not yet." The doctor handed him a cup of coffee. Men like Whitmore don't act in haste. They plan. They prepare. They make sure when they strike, it's decisive. So what do? "We prepare too, Doctor." Carver sat down heavily, his face showing every one of his 58 years. "I've been thinking about this all night, about the law, about what options Clara has." "And?" "Not many." The doctor's voice was grim. "A husband has legal claim to his wife and children. That court order he waved around, even if it was obtained through connections rather than merit, it's still valid. Any judge in this territory would be obligated to honor it." Sam's jaw tightened. "So we just hand her over? Watch him take her and Lily back to Chicago, where he can finish what he started?" "I didn't say that." Dr. Carver met his eyes. "I said her options as his wife are limited." "But what if she wasn't his wife anymore?" Sam set down his coffee. "What are you suggesting?" "There's a circuit judge who comes through Pine Ridge every month. Judge Catherine Sullivan. She's due here in 4 days." The doctor paused, choosing his words carefully. If Clara could petition for an annulment, if she could prove the marriage was based on fraud or coercion, Judge Sullivan might dissolve it. And once the marriage is dissolved, Whitmore's legal claim disappears. Would that work? Could a judge really annul a marriage just like that? It's not simple. Clara would have to testify, provide evidence, convince the judge that her situation warrants extraordinary action. Dr. Carver hesitated. And even if the annulment is granted, Whitmore could appeal, could drag it through the courts for months. But during those months, he couldn't force her to go with him. Exactly. It would buy time. Maybe enough time for him to give up, move on, find someone else to torment. Sam stared at the wall, thinking. 4 days until the judge arrived. 4 days to keep Clara and Lily safe from a man with money, lawyers, and no conscience. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was something. There's another option, Dr. Carver said quietly. One that would make Clara's position even stronger. What? If Clara was married to someone else, Whitmore's claim would be invalid entirely. A woman can't be the property of two men. If she had a new husband, a new legal protector, the court would have to recognize that relationship. Sam felt the words hit him like a physical blow. You're suggesting I marry her? I'm suggesting it's an option. Maybe the only option that protects her completely. We've known each other 3 days. I know. Marriage isn't something you do just to solve a legal problem. No, it isn't. Dr. Carver stood, moving to refill his coffee. But it might be something you do to save a life. 2 lives if you count Lily. Sam was quiet for a long moment. Marriage. The word had always made him want to run in the opposite direction. It meant permanence, responsibility, all the things he'd spent 12 years avoiding. But it also meant protection, safety, a legal shield that even Edmund Whitmore's lawyers couldn't easily break. She'd have to agree to it, Sam said finally. Yes, she would. And she barely knows me. Why would she trust me enough to marry me? Dr. Carver smiled slightly. Why did she trust you enough to let you carry her through a blizzard? Why did she trust you enough to tell you the truth about Whitmore? Sometimes trust doesn't follow logic, Mr. Thornton. Sometimes it just happens. Before Sam could respond, Clara appeared in the doorway. She looked better than she had the day before, some color returning to her cheeks, but her eyes were shadowed with worry. I heard you talking, she said. About options, about the judge. You should be resting, Sam said. I can't rest. Not with Edmund out there, planning God knows what. Clara moved into the room, her arms wrapped around herself. What were you saying? About marriage? Sam and Dr. Carver exchanged a glance. The doctor nodded slightly and excused himself, leaving them alone. Sam didn't know how to start this conversation, didn't know how to explain what the doctor had suggested without it sounding insane. But Clara was watching him, waiting, and he realized she deserved the truth. Dr. Carver thinks there's a way to protect you, he said slowly. A way to make it so Edmund can't claim you legally, no matter what papers he has. How? Marriage. Sam forced himself to meet her eyes. If you were married to someone else, Edmund's claim would be invalid. He couldn't force you to go back to him if you legally belonged to another man. Clara's expression didn't change. She just stood there, processing, her face unreadable. You're suggesting I marry you. I'm suggesting it's an option. It would be a legal arrangement, nothing more. A way to keep you and Lily safe until Edmund gives up and goes away. And then what? We get an annulment? Pretend it never happened? Something like that. Sam's voice roughened. I'm not asking you to be a wife, Clara. Not in any real sense. I'm offering to be a shield. A name on a piece of paper that stands between you and him. Clara was quiet for a long time. Sam could see her thinking, weighing, calculating. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. Why would you do that? Tie yourself to a woman you don't love? Take on a child that isn't yours? Because I made a promise. I said I'd protect you and Lily. This is the best way I know how. You could walk away. Find that ranch job you were looking for. Forget you ever found us in that blizzard. I could. Sam took a step toward her, then stopped himself. But I won't. Because of Lily? Because she grabbed your thumb? Partly. Sam struggled to find words for something he barely understood himself. And partly because of you. Because I've watched you fight for your daughter when most people would have given up. Because you walked through a blizzard rather than stay with a man who hurt you. Because you're still standing, even after everything. And that means something. Clara's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away. If I agreed to this, she said slowly, what would you expect from me? Nothing you aren't willing to give. You'd have your own room, your own life. I wouldn't touch you, wouldn't ask anything of you except the chance to keep you safe. And Lily? I'd protect her like she was my own. But you're her mother. You make the decisions about how she's raised, what she learns. I'd just be there to make sure nobody hurts her. Clara wiped at her tears with the back of her hand. You know what you're offering is insane, right? Marrying a stranger to escape another man? Probably, Sam admitted. But so is walking 40 miles through a blizzard with a baby. Sometimes, insane is the only option that makes sense. She laughed, a real laugh, the first one he'd heard from her. It transformed her face, made her look younger, lighter, like the woman she might have been before Edmund Whitmore broke her down. I need to think about it, she said. This is too big a decision to make in a moment. Take all the time you need. The judge won't be here for 4 days. Whatever you decide, we'll figure something out. Clara nodded and turned to go. At the doorway, she paused, looking back at him. Sam? It was the first time she'd used his first name. Something shifted in his chest at the sound of it. Thank you, not just for the offer, for everything. For stopping when you heard Lily crying. For bringing us here. For standing up to Edmund yesterday. She swallowed hard. I'd forgotten what it felt like to have someone stand up for me. Then she was gone, leaving Sam alone with the morning light and the weight of what he'd just proposed. The next 3 days were the longest of Sam's life. Edmund didn't return to the doctor's house, but his presence hung over the town like a storm cloud. Sam saw him twice, once riding past on a fine black horse with his hired men flanking him, once standing outside the hotel, watching the street with the patient calculation of a predator. Sheriff Brennan kept close watch on all of them, making rounds past the doctor's house more often than usual, making sure his presence was known. But even the sheriff couldn't be everywhere, and Sam found himself sleeping in shifts, one eye always on the door. Clara spent her days recovering, playing with Lily, helping Martha in the kitchen. She didn't mention Sam's proposal, and he didn't press. This had to be her choice, her decision, made without pressure or expectation. On the 3rd day, she found him on the porch, watching the sun set over the mountains. She sat down beside him without speaking, and for a while, they just watched the sky turn orange and gold. I've decided, she said finally. Sam's heart rate quickened, but he kept his voice steady. All right, I want to do it. The marriage. Clara turned to face him. Not because I don't have other options, not because I'm desperate, but because you're the first person who's offered me protection without asking for something in return. And because, she hesitated, because I trust you. I don't know why. I barely know you, but I trust you. You're sure? I'm sure. Clara's voice was firm, but I need you to understand something. I'm not the woman I was before Edmund. I'm not sweet, or soft or easy to love. I'm broken in ways that might never heal. If you're expecting some grateful bride who'll worship you for saving her, you're going to be disappointed. I'm not expecting anything. Good, because I can't promise you a real marriage. I don't know if I'll ever be able to promise that. But I can promise to try, to trust you when I can, to work at it when I can't. And I can promise that you won't regret this. Sam looked at her in the fading light, at this woman who'd survived hell and somehow found the strength to keep fighting. He thought about all the years he'd spent running, all the times he'd convinced himself he wasn't worth staying for. Maybe Clara was right. Maybe he'd just been taking the long way to something he'd wanted all along. I won't regret it, he said. You might. I won't. They sat there as the sun disappeared behind the mountains. Two broken people finding something unexpected in each other. Not love, not yet. Maybe not ever. But something. Something worth protecting. The morning Judge Catherine Sullivan arrived in Pine Ridge, Sam woke to the sound of horses and the rumble of wagon wheels. He dressed quickly and found Dr. Carver already on the porch, watching the commotion on the main street. She's early, the doctor said. That's unusual. Is that good or bad? With Catherine Sullivan, it's hard to tell. Dr. Carver's expression was thoughtful. She's fair, but she's also unpredictable. Doesn't like being told what to do. Doesn't like powerful men who think they can buy their way out of trouble. That could work in our favor. Could. The doctor turned to go back inside. Get Clara ready. I'll send word that we want to be first on the docket. Sam found Clara in the examination room, feeding Lily. She looked up when he entered, and he saw fear flash across her face before she controlled it. The judge is here. I heard the horses. Clara's voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly. Is it time? Dr. Carver's arranging for us to be seen first. He sat down across from her. Are you ready? No, Clara laughed shakily. I'm terrified. Edmund's lawyers will be there. They'll try to make me look crazy, unstable, unfit. They'll say I'm lying about everything. Then we'll prove them wrong. We'll tell the truth, and we'll let the judge decide. What if she decides against us? What if she hands me back to Edmund? Then we'll figure something else out. Sam leaned forward, catching her eyes. Clara, listen to me. Whatever happens in that courtroom, you're not alone. You're not facing him by yourself anymore. Do you understand? She stared at him for a long moment, tears glistening. Then she nodded. I understand. Good. Now finish feeding Lily, and let's go end this. The town meeting hall was packed when they arrived. Word had spread about the hearing, and half of Pine Ridge had shown up to witness the drama. Sam saw the blacksmith who'd given him directions that first night, several ranch hands, shopkeepers and their wives. They watched with curious eyes as Sam helped Clara up the steps. Edmund was already there, sitting in the front row with his lawyers, two men in expensive suits who'd arrived on yesterday's stage. They whispered urgently as Clara entered, and Edmund's eyes tracked her every movement, cold and possessive. Sam positioned himself between Clara and her husband, a physical barrier that he hoped was also a message. The judge entered through a side door, and everyone stood. Catherine Sullivan was perhaps 50, with steel-gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She took her seat at the front table, arranged her papers, and looked out at the assembled crowd with an expression that suggested she had no patience for foolishness. I understand we have an unusual petition this morning, she said, her voice crisp and authoritative. Mrs. Clara Whitmore is seeking an emergency annulment of her marriage to Mr. Edmund Whitmore. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor. Clara's voice was stronger than Sam had expected. And I'm petitioning to marry Mr. Samuel Thornton immediately following the annulment. A murmur went through the courtroom. Edmund's lawyers started whispering again, louder this time. Judge Sullivan silenced them with a look. "Those are serious requests, Mrs. Whitmore. I'll need to hear your full testimony." But first, she looked toward Edmund. "Mr. Whitmore, I understand you have a court order from Chicago regarding custody of your wife and child." Edmund stood, all charm and dignity. "Yes, Your Honor. I have the document here." He handed a sheaf of papers to one of his lawyers, who brought them to the judge. Sullivan read them carefully, her expression growing darker with each page. "This order was issued by Judge Harold Peaton," she said. "A personal friend of your family, is that correct?" "We're acquainted, Your Honor, through business connections." "I see." The judge set down the papers. "And did Judge Peaton hear testimony from your wife before issuing this order? Did he examine evidence of the allegations she's made against you?" Edmund's smile flickered. "My wife is mentally unwell, Your Honor. Her allegations are symptoms of her illness, not facts to be investigated." "That's not what I asked, Mr. Whitmore. Did Judge Peaton hear testimony from Mrs. Whitmore before issuing this custody order?" A pause. "No, Your Honor. There wasn't time. Clara disappeared without warning, and I was frantic with worry." "So you obtained a legal order regarding your wife's custody without her knowledge, presence, or input?" Judge Sullivan's voice could have frozen fire. "That's not how the law is supposed to work, Mr. Whitmore." "Your Honor," Edmund's lead lawyer stood. "My client was acting out of legitimate concern for his wife's well-being. She had disappeared with their infant daughter. He was terrified for their safety. He was terrified for his reputation." Clara's voice cut through the courtroom. "He was terrified that I would tell people what he'd done to me." The room went silent. Edmund's face went very still, the mask of the concerned husband slipping just enough to show what lived underneath. "Mrs. Whitmore," Judge Sullivan said, "please approach and tell me your story, from the beginning." Clara stood, handing Lily to Sam. He took the baby without thinking, cradling her against his chest, and watched Clara walk to the front of the courtroom, head high, shoulders back, the bravest person he'd ever known. She told them everything. The courtship that had seemed like a fairy tale. The wedding that should have been the happiest day of her life. The first blow, 2 weeks later, that had shattered all her illusions. The escalating violence, the isolation, the fear that had become so constant she'd stopped noticing it. When she reached the night she'd run, her voice broke. "He came home drunk and angry. He beat me worse than he ever had before. And when Lily started crying, he picked her up and threw her. My 4-month-old baby. He threw her against the wall like she was garbage." A gasp went through the courtroom. Several women started crying. Even the sheriff, standing by the door, looked away. Edmund was on his feet, his face purple with rage. "That's a lie. She's lying. She's been making up these stories for years." "Mr. Whitmore, sit down." Judge Sullivan's voice cracked like a whip. "You'll have your turn to speak." "This is outrageous. I will not sit here while my wife spreads malicious falsehoods." "Sit down or I'll have you removed from this courtroom." For a moment, Sam thought Edmund might refuse. His hands were clenched, his body rigid with fury. But one of his lawyers grabbed his arm, pulling him back into his seat, whispering urgently. Judge Sullivan turned back to Clara. "Mrs. Whitmore, is there anyone who can corroborate your testimony?" "Dr. Elijah Carver," Clara's voice steadied. "He examined me when I arrived in Pine Ridge. He saw the bruises, the injuries. He can testify to their nature and origin." "Dr. Carver, please approach." The doctor stood and walked to the front of the room, his face grave. "I examined Mrs. Whitmore the night she arrived. She presented with extensive bruising in various stages of healing, indicating repeated trauma over an extended period. There were strangulation marks on her throat, consistent with manual choking. Contusions on her ribs, consistent with kicking. And she glanced at Edmund. A clear boot-print bruise on her left side. More gasps. More murmuring. Judge Sullivan's expression was thunderous. In your professional opinion, Doctor, could these injuries have been self-inflicted? Absolutely not. Several of them were in locations impossible to reach on one's own. And the pattern of injuries is consistent with domestic violence, not accident or self-harm. Thank you, Doctor. The judge turned to Edmund. Mr. Whitmore, would you like to explain how your wife acquired these injuries? Edmund's lawyer stood before Edmund could speak. Your Honor, my client denies any wrongdoing. Mrs. Whitmore is mentally unstable and has been known to injure herself and then blame others. Is there medical documentation of this supposed mental instability? A diagnosis from a qualified physician? We have testimony from my client regarding her erratic behavior. So no actual medical evidence, just your client's assertions. Judge Sullivan's smile was cold. That's becoming a pattern, Mr. Whitmore. Sam watched Edmund's face darken, watched the mask crack and crumble, watched the real man emerge. This wasn't the charming businessman anymore. This was a man who'd been denied something he wanted, and he didn't know how to handle it. This is a farce. Edmund's voice was low, dangerous. My wife belongs to me, by law, by God, by every right that matters. You can't just dissolve a marriage because a woman tells stories. I can do whatever the evidence supports, Mr. Whitmore. And right now, the evidence supports your wife's testimony. Judge Sullivan stood. I'm going to take a 1-hour recess to consider my ruling. When I return, I'll announce my decision. The gavel fell, and the courtroom erupted into conversation. Sam made his way to Clara, who was trembling despite her composed expression. He handed Lily back to her, and she clutched the baby like a lifeline. You did well, he said quietly. I wanted to scream, to cry, to run, but you didn't. You stood there and told the truth, and now everyone knows what kind of man he really is. Clara looked at Edmund, who was arguing heatedly with his lawyers. What if it's not enough? What if she still rules against me? She won't. How can you be sure? Because I saw her face when you talked about Lily being thrown against a wall. That's not a woman who's going to send a baby back to the man who hurt her. Clara leaned against him, just for a moment, drawing strength. Thank you, she whispered, for being here, for standing with me. Nowhere else I'd rather be. They waited out the recess in the small room beside the courtroom, surrounded by Dr. Carver, Martha, and Sheriff Brennan. Nobody spoke much. The tension was too thick for casual conversation. When the clerk called them back, Sam took Clara's hand. Her fingers were ice cold, but her grip was strong. Whatever happens, he said, we face it together. Together, she echoed, and they walked back into the courtroom to hear their fate. Judge Catherine Sullivan stood at the front of the courtroom, her face unreadable. The silence was so complete that Sam could hear Clara's rapid breathing beside him, could feel Lily's small heart beating against his arm where he supported Clara's trembling elbow. I've considered all the evidence and testimony presented today, the judge began. This is an unusual case involving serious allegations and competing legal claims. The law is not always equipped to address situations where human decency and legal technicality are at odds. Sam felt Clara stiffen beside him. He moved his hand to the small of her back, a silent reminder that she wasn't alone. Mrs. Clara Whitmore has presented credible testimony of systematic abuse by her husband, Edmund Whitmore. Judge Sullivan's voice rang through the silent room. This testimony is supported by medical evidence from Dr. Carver and by the observable fact that she fled across dangerous territory in a blizzard rather than remain in her marriage. No woman risks death by exposure unless she's fleeing something worse. Edmund shifted in his seat, his jaw tight. His lawyers leaned in, whispering urgently, but he waved them off. Mr. Edmund Whitmore has presented a court order obtained under questionable circumstances from a judge with personal connections to his family. He has offered no credible explanation for his wife's injuries, no evidence of mental instability beyond his own assertions, and no compelling reason why a terrified woman with an infant would invent such detailed allegations. Sam could see the fury building in Edmund's face, the mask cracking with every word the judge spoke. Furthermore, I find it deeply troubling that Mr. Whitmore's primary concern appears to be his legal rights and his wounded pride, rather than the welfare of his wife and child. Judge Sullivan paused, her eyes finding Edmund's. A man truly concerned for his family's well-being would be relieved to find them alive and safe. Mr. Whitmore seems more interested in reclaiming property than reuniting with loved ones. Your Honor, Edmund's lawyer stood. I must protest. Sit down. I'm not finished. The lawyer sat. Based on the evidence presented, I am granting Mrs. Clara Whitmore's petition for annulment of her marriage to Edmund Whitmore on grounds of fraud, coercion, and credible threat to her life and the life of her child. The marriage is hereby dissolved, effective immediately. Clara's knees buckled. Sam caught her, holding her upright, feeling the shock running through her body. Furthermore, the judge continued, I am granting Mrs. Whitmore temporary protective custody of the minor child, Lily Whitmore, pending final resolution of custody matters. Mr. Edmund Whitmore is hereby ordered to maintain a distance of no less than 100 yards from Clara Whitmore and her daughter. Any violation of this order will result in immediate arrest. Edmund shot to his feet. This is an outrage. You have no right to dissolve my marriage, no right to take my child. I have every right, Mr. Whitmore. This is my courtroom, my jurisdiction, and my ruling. Judge Sullivan's voice could have cut glass. If you don't like it, you're welcome to appeal to the Territorial Supreme Court. Until then, you will abide by my order, or you will find yourself in jail. She turned to Sam. Mr. Thornton, you've petitioned to marry Miss Whitmore immediately following the annulment. Is that still your intention? Yes, Your Honor. And Miss Whitmore, you consent to this marriage freely, without coercion? Yes, Your Honor. Clara's voice was thick with tears, but it didn't waver. Then, by the power vested in me by the Montana Territory, I hereby authorize and recognize the marriage of Samuel Thornton and Clara Whitmore. The judge paused. You may exchange vows now if you wish, or formalize the union at a later time. For legal purposes, the marriage is recognized as of this moment. Sam turned to Clara. She was crying openly now, tears streaming down her face, but her eyes were clear, hopeful, alive in a way he hadn't seen before. He didn't have vows prepared, hadn't thought beyond the legal necessity of this moment. But looking at her, at the trust in her eyes, despite everything she'd endured, words came. I promise to protect you and Lily with everything I have, he said. I promise to give you space to heal and grow and find yourself again. I promise to ask nothing from you except the chance to be worthy of your trust. He paused. And I promise you'll never have to run again. Clara wiped at her tears. I promise to trust you when I can, to try when I can't, and to remember that not all men are like the one I married before. I promise to let you help us, even when it's hard for me to accept help. And I promise, her voice broke, then steadied, I promise that someday I'll be strong enough to stand on my own. But until then, I'll let you stand with me." Judge Sullivan's expression softened. "Then, by the authority vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. Mr. Thornton, you may kiss your bride, if she is amenable." Sam looked at Clara, asking silent permission. She nodded, just barely, and he leaned in and brushed the lightest of kisses across her forehead. A promise, not a claim. The courtroom erupted. People were standing, clapping, some of the women crying. It was as if the whole town had been holding its breath and could finally exhale. But through the celebration, Sam kept his eyes on Edmund Whitmore. The man stood frozen, his face white with rage, his hands clenched at his sides. His lawyers were pulling him toward the door, talking urgently, but Edmund shook them off. As he passed Sam and Clara, he stopped. His voice dropped to a whisper only they could hear. "This isn't over. You think a piece of paper changes anything? You think you can steal my wife and my child and walk away? I'll destroy you both. I'll burn this whole town down if I have to." "Mr. Whitmore." Sheriff Brennan appeared at Edmund's elbow, hand resting on his gun belt. "You're in violation of the protective order. I suggest you leave this courtroom immediately and check out of your hotel. You have until sunset to be out of Pine Ridge." Edmund's eyes blazed, but he turned and stalked out, his lawyers and hired men following. The door slammed behind them hard enough to rattle the windows. Judge Sullivan watched them go, then looked at Sam and Clara. "I meant what I said about that protective order. If he comes near you, have him arrested. And Mr. Thornton?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Take care of your family. Something tells me you're going to need every bit of that protection you promised." Outside the courthouse, townspeople crowded around to offer congratulations. The blacksmith clapped Sam on the shoulder. Martha, from the doctor's house, pressed a jar of preserves into Clara's hands. Even some of the ranch hands offered to help with whatever needed doing. Sam stood in the middle of it all, Clara beside him with Lily in her arms, and felt something he hadn't felt in 12 years. Hope. Dr. Carver appeared at his side. "You've given this town something to believe in, Sam. People around here see too much hardship. Watching you stand up for Clara and Lily, it matters. Just doing what needed doing, that's what makes it matter." They walked back to the doctor's house in the fading afternoon light, surrounded by well-wishers. Somewhere in the distance, Sam heard the sound of horses leaving town at a gallop. Edmund and his men riding out before sunset as ordered. But Sam knew this wasn't over. Men like Edmund Whitmore didn't accept defeat. They regrouped. They planned. They waited for the right moment to strike. Sam would wait too. And when Edmund made his move, he'd be ready. The next 3 days were quiet. Too quiet. Sam took a job at the livery stable, shoveling hay and grooming horses, earning enough to rent a small cabin on the edge of town. It wasn't much, 2 rooms and a loft, with a cast-iron stove and a pump out back, but it was theirs. Clara spent her days settling in, making the cabin feel like a home. She hung curtains Martha had given her, arranged the few pieces of furniture they'd acquired, and played with Lily on a quilt spread before the fire. At night, Sam slept in the main room while Clara and Lily took the bedroom. He'd offered to sleep in the livery to give them more privacy, but Clara had refused. "You promised to protect us," she said. Hard to do that from the other side of town. So he stayed, and slowly, carefully, they began to build something that felt almost like a life. On the 4th night, Clara joined him by the fire after putting Lily to bed. She sat in the chair across from him, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea, her expression thoughtful. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." She was quiet for a moment, gathering her thoughts. "What happened to you? Before all this, before the drifting. You told me you'd seen things in the war, done things. What things?" Sam stared into the fire, watching the flames dance. Nobody had asked him that question in 12 years. He'd made sure of it, keeping people at a distance, never staying long enough for anyone to get curious. But Clara wasn't just anyone. She was his wife, at least on paper. And she'd trusted him with her story. Maybe it was time he trusted her with his. "I was at Antietam," he said finally, "Fredericksburg, Gettysburg, a dozen other places that don't have names, just body counts. I saw men die in ways no one should have to see. Held boys younger than me while they bled out, crying for their mothers." Clara didn't speak. She just listened, her eyes steady on his face. "There was a day, near the end. An officer ordered us to burn a farmhouse. Said there were Confederate sympathizers inside, hiding supplies. But I'd scouted that farm myself. I knew who was inside. A mother and 3 children. The father was off fighting, probably dead by then." Sam's voice roughened. "I refused the order. Told the officer if he wanted to murder children, he'd have to do it himself." "What happened?" "Court-martial. Dishonorable discharge. The officer, he had connections. Made sure I'd never work for any company that valued its army contracts." Sam smiled bitterly. "So I started drifting. Ranch to ranch, town to town, never staying long enough to matter." "And the family? The woman and children?" Sam was quiet for a long moment. "The officer didn't burn the farmhouse. I don't know if it was because I shamed him in front of the men, or because he was worried about what I might do if he tried. But when I left, they were still alive." "So you saved them?" "Maybe. Or maybe I just delayed the inevitable. War doesn't care about individual acts of decency. It just keeps grinding forward." Clara set down her tea and crossed to him, kneeling beside his chair. "You think refusing that order makes you damaged? Unworthy?" "I think I've seen too much. Done too much. I think there are things inside me that don't fit with normal life anymore." Clara took his hand, her fingers small and warm. "I've seen what damaged looks like, Sam. I was married to it for 3 years. You're not damaged. You're haunted. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yes." She squeezed his hand. "Damaged people hurt others because they can't feel their own pain. Haunted people feel too much. They carry their pain with them, let it weigh them down, punish themselves for things that weren't their fault." Sam looked at her, at this woman who'd survived her own kind of war, and somehow found the strength to see clearly. "When did you get so wise?" "When I had to." Clara smiled slightly. "When I was lying in that blizzard, thinking I was going to die, I had a lot of time to think. About what mattered. About what I'd been afraid of. About what I wanted if I somehow got another chance." "What did you want?" "To stop being afraid. To raise my daughter in peace. To find someone who'd see me as a person, not as property." She paused. "I didn't expect to find that someone in a stranger who pulled me out of a snowdrift." "Life's funny that way." "It is." Clara stood, but she didn't let go of his hand. "Thank you, Sam, for telling me, for trusting me." "Seemed only fair. You trusted me first." She smiled, and it was a real smile, warm and genuine. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a long day." "Why's that?" "Because I'm going to teach you how to change a diaper without looking like you're defusing a bomb." Sam laughed, surprised by the sound of it. Been a while since he'd laughed at anything. "That might be harder than anything I did in the war." "I believe in you." She went back to the bedroom, closing the door softly behind her. Sam sat by the fire for a while longer, thinking about what she'd said. Haunted, not damaged. Maybe she was right. Maybe there was a difference. Maybe it wasn't too late to find out. The attack came 2 nights later. Sam woke to the smell of smoke, that acrid burn that meant only one thing. He was on his feet before his eyes were fully open, reaching for his gun, moving toward the door. "Clara!" His voice was sharp. "Get Lily, now!" She appeared in the bedroom doorway, Lily in her arms, her face pale with fear. "What's happening?" "Fire! Stay behind me." Sam opened the front door and stepped onto the porch. The livery stable was burning, flames shooting into the night sky, horses screaming inside. But that wasn't what froze his blood. 3 men stood in the street, silhouettes against the firelight. 2 of them held torches. The third held a gun. Edmund Whitmore stepped forward, his face twisted with hatred. "Did you think I'd just leave? Did you think you could take what's mine and there'd be no consequences?" Clara gasped behind Sam. He pushed her back, putting himself between her and the gun. "It's over, Edmund," the judge ruled. "The sheriff knows you're here. Whatever you're planning, it won't work. The sheriff is dealing with a fire." Edmund smiled, and there was nothing human in it. Amazing how a burning stable can distract an entire town. By the time anyone realizes what's happening here, we'll be long gone. Gone where? Back to Chicago, with my wife and my daughter, where they belong. They're not yours anymore. Sam's hand tightened on his gun. The marriage was annulled. Clara's my wife now. "A piece of paper," Edmund spat the words. "You think that matters? You think any of this matters? Clara belongs to me. She's always belonged to me. And I'd rather see her dead than with some worthless drifter who doesn't know his place." Sam heard Clara's sharp intake of breath, felt Lily stir and whimper in her mother's arms. "Take one more step," he said quietly, "and it'll be your last." Edmund laughed. "You're outgunned, Thornton. 3 against 1. Even if you get me, my men will cut you down, and then they'll take Clara and Lily back where they belong." The 2 hired men moved forward, spreading out, flanking Sam. He calculated angles, distances, odds. Edmund was right. 3 against 1 wasn't good odds. But Sam had faced worse in the war, and he'd made a promise. "Clara," he said without turning, "when I move, you run. Dr. Carver's house. Don't stop. Don't look back. I'm not leaving you. You're not leaving me. You're protecting Lily. That's what matters. That's all that matters." Edmund raised his gun. "Enough talking. Clara, come here. Now." "No." The word came from Clara, steady and clear. Sam felt her step up beside him, felt her hand on his arm. "I'm not going back to you, Edmund. Not ever. You can threaten and burn and kill, but I'm not going back. I'd rather die here than live one more day as your wife." Something flickered in Edmund's eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or hurt. Or just wounded pride that couldn't understand why his property kept refusing him. "Then you'll die," he said. "And so will that bastard child. And so will this worthless man you chose over me." He raised the gun, aiming at Sam's chest. Sam moved. He pushed Clara down with one hand, drew his revolver with the other, and fired in one smooth motion. The bullet caught Edmund in the shoulder, spinning him around. His shot went wild, punching into the cabin wall. The 2 hired men raised their weapons, but Sam was already moving, ducking behind the porch rail, firing twice more. One man went down. The other dove for cover. "Run!" Sam grabbed Clara's arm, hauling her to her feet. "Now!" They ran, Clara clutching Lily to her chest, Sam covering their retreat. The remaining hired man fired after them, bullets kicking up snow around their feet. But the darkness and the chaos worked in their favor. They made it to the tree line at the edge of town. Sam pulled Clara behind a thick pine, pressing her against the trunk, shielding her body with his. "Are you hit?" "No." Clara was shaking violently, but her voice was steady. Lily's fine. We're fine. Stay here. Don't move. Sam, she grabbed his arm. Don't go back there alone. I have to finish this. He'll kill you. Maybe. Sam met her eyes in the darkness. But if I don't stop him now, he'll never stop coming. Not for you, not for Lily, not ever. Clara stared at him, tears freezing on her cheeks. Then she did something that surprised them both. She kissed him. Not on the forehead, not a promise. A real kiss, desperate and fierce, her free hand fisting in his coat. Come back to me, she whispered against his lips. Promise me you'll come back. I promise. Sam pulled away before he could change his mind and moved back toward the cabin. Edmund was still there, clutching his wounded shoulder, screaming orders at his remaining man. The fire at the livery had spread, illuminating the whole scene in hellish orange light. People were emerging from their houses now, drawn by the shots and the flames. Sam saw Sheriff Brennan running toward them, gun drawn. Saw Dr. Carver helping the wounded. Saw the townspeople forming bucket brigades, trying to control the blaze. It's over, Edmund. Sam stepped into the light, his gun raised. Your man's dead. The sheriff's here. Give up. Edmund's face twisted. Give up? Give up? You've taken everything from me. My wife, my daughter, my reputation. You think I'm going to give up? He raised his gun with his good arm, aiming at Sam's head. Drop it, Whitmore. Sheriff Brennan's voice rang out, his own weapon trained on Edmund. This is done. Edmund looked at the sheriff, at Sam, at the townspeople gathered around. He saw what they all saw. A man beaten, humiliated, with nowhere left to run. For a moment, Sam thought he might surrender. Then Edmund Whitmore turned the gun toward himself. No! Sam lunged forward. The shot rang out before he could reach him. Edmund crumpled to the ground, the gun falling from his lifeless hand. Sam stood over him, breathing hard, feeling nothing but a strange, hollow emptiness. This wasn't how he'd wanted it to end. He'd wanted justice, not tragedy. Wanted Edmund to face the consequences of his actions, not escape them. But maybe this was justice, in its own terrible way. A man who'd spent his life hurting others, finally hurting himself. Sheriff Brennan appeared beside him, looking down at the body. Lord have mercy. It's over, Sam said. It's finally over. He turned and walked back into the darkness, back toward the tree line, back to Clara. She was still there, still pressed against the pine tree, still holding Lily. When she saw him emerge from the shadows, she let out a sob of relief. You came back. I promised. Clara threw herself into his arms, Lily squished between them, all three of them crying, shaking, holding on like they'd never let go. Is he dead? Clara whispered. Yes. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Good. Sam pulled back to look at her. You don't mean that. Yes, I do. Clara's voice was fierce. I know I should feel something. Guilt, maybe. Or sadness. But all I feel is relief. He can't hurt us anymore. He can't hurt Lily. It's over. It's over, Sam agreed. They stood there in the cold and the dark, holding each other, while behind them the fire slowly died and the town began to settle. Sam had promised Clara she'd never have to run again. Now, finally, that promise could be kept. The weeks after Edmund's death passed in a strange blur of grief and relief, rebuilding and recovery. The livery stable was gone, burned to the foundation, but the town came together to clear the wreckage and begin again. Sam worked alongside the other men, hauling charred timber, digging new post holes, raising fresh walls against the winter sky. Clara watched him from the doctor's porch one afternoon, Lily bundled in her arms, her breath fogging in the cold air. "He's different," she said to Martha, who stood beside her. "Since that night. Different how?" "I don't know. Lighter, maybe? Like something that was pressing down on him finally lifted." Martha smiled. "That's what happens when a man finds his purpose. He stops running from himself." Clara thought about that as Sam looked up, catching her eye across the distance. He raised a hand in greeting, and she waved back, feeling something warm bloom in her chest despite the cold. Maybe Martha was right. Maybe purpose was what had been missing. Not just for Sam, but for both of them. That evening, after Lily was asleep, Sam came to sit beside Clara by the fire in their small cabin. They'd rebuilt together, the townspeople helping, and now it felt more like a home than anywhere Clara had ever lived. "You're quiet tonight," Sam said. "Thinking. About?" "Everything." Clara pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders. "About Edmund. About what happened. About what comes next." "Does what happened bother you? The way it ended?" Clara considered the question carefully. She'd expected to feel something when Edmund died. Guilt, maybe, or sorrow for the man he might have been if life had shaped him differently. But all she'd felt was relief. Pure, uncomplicated relief. "No," she said finally. "It doesn't bother me. I know it should. The church says we should mourn even our enemies. But I can't mourn him, Sam. I can't pretend he was anything other than what he was." "You don't have to pretend anything. Not with me." "I know. That's what's strange." Clara turned to face him. "With Edmund, I was always pretending, always performing, being the wife he wanted, saying the things he wanted to hear. I've never known what it feels like to just be myself." "And now?" "Now I'm learning." Clara smiled slightly. "It's terrifying." Sam reached over and took her hand. His grip was warm, calloused from work, steady in a way that made her feel anchored. "You can be whoever you want to be, Clara. I'm not going anywhere." She looked at their joined hands, at the contrast between his rough fingers and her smaller ones. Something shifted in her chest. Something that had been locked away for so long she'd forgotten it existed. "Sam." "Yeah?" "That kiss, before you went back to face Edmund." Clara swallowed hard. "I meant it." Sam was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "I know." "Did you?" "Did I what?" "Mean it. When you kissed me back." Sam turned to face her, his gray-blue eyes dark in the firelight. "Clara, I've spent 12 years convinced I wasn't capable of feeling anything real for anyone. That the war had broken something inside me that couldn't be fixed." He paused. "And then I heard your daughter crying in a blizzard, and I held her against my chest. And something woke up. Something I thought was dead. What was it? Hope, maybe? Or just the wanting of it? The belief that maybe I could have something worth keeping. And now? Now I have you. I have Lily. I have a home and work and people who actually seem to care whether I live or die." Sam's hand tightened on hers. "I don't know if what I feel is love, Clara. I don't know if I even know what love is anymore. But I know I want to be with you. I know I want to watch Lily grow up. I know I want to build something real, something that lasts." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "That's enough," she whispered. "That's more than enough." She leaned forward and kissed him, soft and slow. Nothing desperate about it this time. Just two people finding their way to each other through all the broken places. When she pulled back, Sam was smiling. It transformed his face, made him look younger, lighter, like the man he might have been if life had been kinder. "What happens now?" Clara asked. "Now we live." Sam's voice was steady. "We raise Lily. We figure out who we are without fear breathing down our necks. And someday, maybe, we stop calling this a marriage of convenience and start calling it something else." "What would we call it?" Sam thought for a moment. "Ours," he said finally. "We call it ours." Spring came slowly to Pine Ridge, the snow melting in patches, revealing brown grass and mud and the first tentative shoots of new growth. Clara stood at the window of their cabin, watching Lily crawl across the floor, chasing a ball of yarn Martha had given her. The baby was 8 months old now, sturdy and bright-eyed, her dark hair curling around her ears. She'd started making sounds that might have been words, babbling at Sam when he came home from work, reaching for Clara with grabby hands. She'd never known fear, never known violence, never known the man who'd thrown her against a wall. That was Clara's greatest gift to her daughter. Not safety, not security, but the absence of memory. Lily would grow up knowing only Sam's gentle hands, only Clara's love, only the peace of this small cabin and the people who'd become their family. The door opened, and Sam came in, stomping mud off his boots. He'd been helping rebuild the mercantile, which had taken some damage in the fire. The work kept him busy, kept him connected to the community that had embraced them both. "She's getting fast," Sam said, watching Lily scoot across the floor. "Too fast." Clara smiled. "Yesterday she almost made it to the fireplace before I caught her." Sam crossed to Lily and scooped her up, swinging her high until she shrieked with laughter. Her small hands patted his face, exploring his beard, his eyes, his mouth. Watching them, Clara felt her heart expand until it hurt. "Sam?" "Yeah?" "I want to make it official. The adoption. I want you to be her legal father, not just her protector." Sam went still. Lily balanced on his hip. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." Clara moved to stand beside them. "You've been her father from the moment you picked her up in that blizzard. The paperwork is just catching up to the truth." Sam looked at Lily, at her dark blue eyes watching him with complete trust. Clara could see the emotion working across his face, the way he struggled to contain something too big for words. "I'd like that," he said finally. "I'd like that more than I can say. Then we'll talk to the judge next time she comes through. Make it legal. Make it permanent." Sam pulled Clara into his arms. Lily nestled between them. They stood there in the small cabin, 3 people who'd found each other against all odds, and for the first time, it felt like more than survival. It felt like a beginning. Judge Catherine Sullivan returned to Pine Ridge in early May, when the roads had dried enough for travel and the meadows were starting to bloom. She heard their petition in the same courtroom where she'd dissolved Clara's first marriage, her expression thoughtful as she reviewed the paperwork. "Mr. Thornton," she said, "you understand what you're requesting. You want to legally adopt Lily Whitmore, making her your daughter in the eyes of the law." "Yes, Your Honor." "This is a significant commitment. The child is not your blood. You have no obligation to her beyond the one you've chosen to assume." "I know." Sam's voice was steady. "But blood isn't what makes a family, Your Honor. Love is. Choice is. I chose Clara and Lily the night I found them in that blizzard. I'm just asking the law to recognize what already exists." Judge Sullivan turned to Clara. "Mrs. Thornton, do you consent to this adoption?" "More than consent." Clara's voice rang with conviction. "I want it. I want Lily to have a father who will protect her and love her without condition. Sam is that man. He's been that man from the beginning." The judge was quiet for a moment, studying them both. Then she smiled, a rare expression that softened her stern features. In all my years on the circuit, I've rarely seen a family fight so hard to become official. She signed the documents with a flourish. Mr. Samuel Thornton, you are hereby recognized as the legal father of Lily Grace Thornton. May you raise her with the same courage you've shown in claiming her. Lily Grace Thornton. Clara tested the name on her tongue. That's beautiful. It's hers. Sam took the documents from the judge, his hands trembling slightly. It's ours. They walked out of the courthouse into the spring sunshine, Lily babbling happily in Clara's arms. The townspeople had gathered again, just as they had for the first hearing. But this time, the mood was purely celebratory. Martha had baked a cake. Dr. Carver produced a bottle of something amber and expensive-looking. Sheriff Brennan clapped Sam on the back, hard enough to make him stagger. "Congratulations, Papa," Brennan said with a grin. Papa. The word hit Sam like a physical blow. He'd never expected to hear it, never believed he deserved it. But standing there, with Clara beside him and Lily reaching for his face, he realized he'd been wrong about a lot of things. Maybe deserving wasn't the point. Maybe the trying was enough. "Thank you," he managed. "All of you. For everything." "That's what community is," Doc Carver said. "We take care of our own." Clara leaned into Sam's side, Lily between them, and felt something settle in her chest. Something that had been restless and afraid for as long as she could remember. She was home. The summer passed in a rhythm of work and rest, growth and change. Sam bought the livery stable when the previous owner decided to retire, and Clara started taking in sewing, using the skills she'd learned before Edmund to build something of her own. They weren't rich, but they were comfortable. They weren't perfect, but they were trying. And slowly, carefully, they were falling in love. It happened in small moments. The way Sam brought Clara wildflowers from the meadow. The way Clara mended his shirts without being asked. The way they sat on the porch at night, watching the stars, talking about nothing and everything. One evening in August, with Lily asleep in her crib and the air thick with summer heat, Clara turned to Sam and said the words she'd been holding back for months. "I love you." Sam went very still. "You don't have to say that." "I know I don't have to." Clara took his face in her hands, making him look at her. "I want to. I love you, Sam, not because you saved me, not because you gave me and Lily a home, but because you're kind and brave and good, and you make me believe I can be those things too." Clara. "You don't have to say it back. I know this isn't what you signed up for. I know you married me to protect me, not to love me. But I needed you to know." Sam stared at her for a long moment, his gray-blue eyes dark with emotion. Then he pulled her close and kissed her, deep and thorough, a kiss that said everything words couldn't. When he finally broke away, his voice was rough. "I love you too. I think I have since the moment you looked at me in Dr. Carver's house and asked why I'd bother helping a stranger." "That long?" "That long." Sam pressed his forehead to hers. "I just didn't know what to call it. Didn't know I was allowed to want it." "You're allowed." Clara kissed him again, softer this time. "You're allowed to want everything." That night, for the first time, Clara didn't sleep in the bedroom alone. And in the morning, when she woke in Sam's arms, with Lily's happy babbling coming from the next room, she knew that the marriage of convenience had become something else entirely. It had become a marriage of choice. The years unfolded like a story being written in real time. Lily took her first steps on a crisp October morning, toddling towards Sam with her arms outstretched. She said her first word a month later, not mama, not papa, but horse, which made Sam laugh until he cried. Clara's sewing business grew, and soon she had more work than she could handle. She hired a young widow from the edge of town, teaching her the trade, creating something that would outlast herself. Sam expanded the livery, adding a blacksmith forge, a carriage repair shop. He hired hands when he needed them, paid fair wages, became known as a man whose word was his bond. They had more children. A boy they named Thomas after the sheriff who'd stood by them. A girl they called Martha, for the woman who'd cared for Lily when Clara couldn't. And through it all, Lily grew. She grew into a bright, fearless girl who rode horses better than any boy in town and asked questions that made grown men stammer. She had Clara's dark hair and Edmund's blue eyes, but nothing else of the man who'd fathered her. Every good thing in her came from the parents who'd chosen her. On Lily's 10th birthday, the family gathered for a celebration. Thomas was 8 now, a serious boy who loved books and asked endless questions about the stars. Martha was 5, a whirlwind of energy who followed Lily everywhere. Sam watched them from the porch of the house they'd built together. A real house now, with 4 bedrooms and a parlor and a kitchen big enough for the whole family to gather. "What are you thinking?" Clara came to stand beside him, her hand finding his. "I'm thinking about that night in the blizzard, when I heard Lily crying and almost rode past." "But you didn't." "But I almost did." Sam's voice was quiet. "I was so sure I wasn't worth stopping for. So sure nothing good could come from someone like me. And now? Now I have everything." Sam turned to look at her, at this woman who'd walked through hell and somehow found her way to him. A wife, 3 children, a home, a life. He shook his head. "If I'd ridden past that night, none of this would exist." "But you didn't." Clara squeezed his hand. "You heard her crying and you stopped. That's who you are, Sam. That's who you've always been." Lily appeared in the doorway, her 10th birthday making her feel very grown up. "Papa, the cake is ready."
"Mama says you have to come blow out the candles with me." "I'm coming, sweetheart." Sam followed his daughter into the house, into the warmth and noise and chaos of his family. Clara fell into step beside him, and for a moment they just stood there, watching their children laugh and play. "Happy?" Clara asked. "More than I ever thought possible." "Good, because this is just the beginning. We have a lot more years to fill." Sam pulled her close and kissed her, right there in front of the children, who groaned and covered their eyes. "Then let's not waste a single one." 20 years later, Sam stood at the window of the same house, his hair gray now, his face lined with age and experience. Clara sat beside the fire, her sewing in her lap, as peaceful as she'd ever been. Lily had married and moved to Billings, but she visited often, bringing her own 3 children to see their grandparents. Thomas had become a teacher, traveling east to study, and returning to open a school in Pine Ridge. Martha had married the sheriff's son and lived just down the road, and Edmund Whitmore was nothing but a distant memory, a shadow that had long since lost its power to frighten. A knock at the door pulled Sam from his thoughts. He opened it to find a young woman on the porch, perhaps 25, well-dressed, with nervous hands and familiar eyes. "Mr. Thornton, my name is Elizabeth Whitmore. I believe you knew my father, Edmund Whitmore." Sam's hand moved instinctively toward the gun he no longer wore. "What do you want?" "I'm not here to cause trouble." Elizabeth's voice was rushed, anxious. "I'm here to thank you, to apologize, to try to make sense of something I've struggled with my whole life." Clara appeared in the doorway behind Sam, her expression wary. "What's going on?" "This is Elizabeth Whitmore," Sam said. "Edmund's daughter. From before Clara."
Elizabeth nodded, tears welling in her eyes. After my father died, his papers were sent to me. Among them was a journal.
He wrote about you, Mrs. Thornton. About Clara. About what he'd done. She swallowed hard.
I didn't know. My whole life I was told my mother had abandoned us, that she was unstable, dangerous. I didn't know he'd hurt her so badly she ran. I didn't know he'd almost killed Lily.
Clara moved to stand beside Sam, her hand finding his.
That's a heavy thing to carry.
It is. Elizabeth wiped at her tears.
I came here because I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. Not for my father, because I can't apologize for a dead man's sins, but for myself, for believing his lies, for not questioning sooner.
You were a child, Sam said, surprising himself with the gentleness in his voice. Children believe what they're told.
I'm not a child anymore. I have a choice now about what kind of person I become.
Elizabeth met his eyes directly.
I'm a lawyer, Mr. Thornton. I work with women trying to escape abusive marriages. Because of what I learned about my father, because of what you did for Clara and Lily.
I wanted you to know that something good came from all that pain. Clara was crying now, silent tears tracking down her cheeks. Would you like to come in? Have some tea? Elizabeth hesitated.
I don't want to intrude.
You're not intruding. Clara opened the door wider. Family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about the choices we make. They sat together in the parlor, three people connected by tragedy and survival, and talked until the sun set. Elizabeth learned about Lily, about Thomas and Martha, about the life Clara and Sam had built from the ashes of her father's cruelty. And when she left, promising to return, promising to meet her half-sister, Clara stood at the window and watched her go. "Are you all right?" Sam asked. "More than all right." Clara turned to face him, her eyes bright despite her age. "For 20 years I've carried guilt about Edmund, about hating him, about being glad he was dead." But watching Elizabeth walk away, knowing she's using her father's legacy to help other women, I finally understand.
Understand what?
That nothing is wasted. Not the pain, not the fear, not even Edmund's cruelty. It all becomes part of something larger, something we can't see until years later. She took Sam's hands in hers. You stopping that night in the blizzard, that one choice, it rippled outward in ways we never imagined. Lily grew up safe. We built this family. And now Elizabeth is helping women we'll never meet, all because you heard a baby crying and couldn't ride past. Sam pulled her close, holding her the way he'd held her 1,000 times before. I just did what felt right. That's what makes it matter. Clara pressed her cheek to his chest, listening to his heartbeat. That's what makes all of it matter. On the night of Sam's 60th birthday, the whole family gathered at the old house in Pine Ridge. Lily came with her husband and children. Thomas brought his wife and the twins. Martha arrived with her brood of 4, each one louder than the last. The house was full of noise and laughter and the kind of chaos that only comes from people who love each other completely. After dinner, Lily stood and raised her glass. "To my father," she said, her voice strong and sure, "who heard me crying when I was a baby, alone in a blizzard, and chose to stop. Who carried me through the storm and never let go. Everything good in my life started the day he made that choice." Sam felt tears prick at his eyes, but he didn't look away. He'd spent so many years believing he wasn't worth staying for, wasn't capable of building anything lasting. But looking around this room, at the children and grandchildren who existed because he'd stopped one winter night, he realized he'd been wrong. So wrong.
Clara took his hand under the table, squeezing gently. He squeezed back. "Thank you," he managed, his voice rough. "All of you."
For believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself. "We didn't believe in you," Thomas said with a grin. "We knew. There's a difference." Everyone laughed, and Sam laughed with them, letting the joy wash over him like warm water.
Later, when the guests had gone and the house was quiet, Sam and Clara sat on the porch together, watching the stars come out. They were older now, slower, but the connection between them had only deepened with time. "Do you ever think about it?" Clara asked. "That night in the blizzard?" "Every day," Sam's voice was soft. "Every single day I think about what would have happened if I'd ridden past. If I hadn't heard Lily crying. If I'd chosen to keep moving." "But you didn't choose that." "No, I didn't." Sam turned to look at her, at this woman who'd walked through fire and somehow found her way to him. "I chose you. I chose Lily. I chose this." "And you never regretted it?" "Not for 1 second." Sam took her hand, threading his fingers through hers.
"You and Lily, you gave me something I never thought I'd have. A reason to stop running. A place to belong. A family." Clara leaned her head on his shoulder, the same way she had 1,000 times before. "I love you, Sam Thornton." "I love you too, Clara Thornton." They sat there in the darkness, two people who'd found each other against all odds, and watched the stars wheel overhead. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. The wind rustled through the pines, and the world kept turning, the same way it had for millions of years before them, and would for millions of years after. But in this moment, in this place, none of that mattered. What mattered was the choice Sam had made on a frozen night 20 years ago. The choice to stop. The choice to help. The choice to love. The sound of mercy, it turned out, wasn't just a baby's cry in a blizzard. It was the echo of that moment reverberating through generations, touching lives and shaping futures, proving that sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is simply stop and care when the world says to keep riding. Samuel Thornton had spent half his life running from everything, but on one winter night he'd heard a baby crying in the darkness, and he'd made a choice that changed everything. He'd stopped, and in stopping,